Okay, hello, this is Dan Winter part 2 because I forgot some stuff about the history because you were saying some interesting history stuff that and maybe we got it from the book Guardians of the Grail by some guy. I'm going to have to listen to his thing again because I'd like to read that, or at least YouTube the guy or something and read some of that history because I'm doing history timeline right now and I'd like to find out some of that stuff and to plug it in. But he said some interesting stuff. For example, Dan Winter. I don't know. I'm under this kind of the impression that maybe Dan Winter has a little bit of UFOitis. He seems to believe everything that he reads, or he just believes lots of stuff, and I don't know. Because he said that like some famous guy, I can't remember, from England, who was like a bishop or something, was actually William Shakespeare, and that William Shakespeare was Queen Elizabeth's son. But he wasn't a recognized son of Queen Elizabeth, and that he was also some other spy by the name of another name sent to go off and to the Middle East to like research something, and that was William Shakespeare too, and that was really weird. But he also said that Akhenaten from Egypt was Moses. And I actually did a little bit of research, and Akhenaten lived at the same exact time as Moses. And all of the pharaohs around the time of Akhenaten were called Moses. And in ancient Egyptian means son of Moses. And everybody knows Moses was part of the royal line of Egypt. They say he was a orphan, but it makes sense that in reality he was real. Like he was actually the royal line, because the Hittites took control of Egypt, and I think maybe it was the Hittites who were actually in control of Egypt at that time. And there's this one Jewish filmmaker thinks that the Hittites were the Jews, or a group of the Jews. And anyways, what Dan Winter said, which is kind of interesting, is that Akhenaten, well, everybody knows Akhenaten, he was the monotheist, and he tried to create monotheism in Egypt. And before that, Egypt was a polytheism, and they were making it was very very money oriented. They turned it into a whole money thing, and that's basically what Dan Winter was talking about, like with the cosmos, is that like, and the problems start happening when people start wanting to make money off of something, to milk the planet, milk the cosmos, become vampires and suck the life forces out of everybody around you. And so I think he was saying that's where the present day banking system and insurance system and stuff comes from. Personally, I don't have a problem with the banking system or insurance system, but that's just what he was saying. But as far as monetizing religion, I have a problem with that, and that's definitely a problem that we've had, even though monetizing religion and all the selling passages into heaven is what made the great St. Peter's Cathedral, and it's a beautiful thing. But still, selling people's passage into heaven, or else they have to burn in hell for all of eternity, is a bad thing, and it causes problems to this day. All these stupid fundamentalist Christians are trying to tell people they're going to burn in hell forever because they don't bow down their allegiance to Jesus. And so that's basically what these priests back in ancient Egypt were doing, is they were having all these people, pay money to this god and that god and give offerings to this god and that god in order to go to heaven. And, the Greeks were doing the same thing, taking it too far, building temples and offering food. And it's basically a drain on society when you're offering something to an imaginary force, when you could be offering it to other human beings who actually need it, And anyways, Dan Winter was saying that is actually how, and of course lots of other people were saying it, but he was saying it that lots of people, that's how the astral deities, the vampire ones, actually feed off of us, is they feed off of our fear and that emotion. And they suck all on our glands, on our, we have the adrenal, we have the all of our glands and juices and can't think of the word, but you know, that whole system we have, they get us to feel that fear and that anger and the, you know, all of that, and they actually suck off of it astrally from the higher dimensions, and that's what feeds them. Because they lost it when they blew up their star system and lost their astral bodies and their angel bodies or whatever. And so that's basically why how these priests were maybe what caused these priests back then to make money and off of getting people to pay for all of their you know, salvation and stuff. And so Eknat Han was created. He was engineered, bioengineered genetically by the good aliens to come in and be the guy to try to create monotheism, you know, where you don't have to pay anybody and you can just be your own person and believe in God, and so that connects you fractally to eternity, just you directly without having to go through somebody else, because that's where the schism comes in. That's where the break in the fractal comes in. The blockage is when you have to, you know, go through this person in order to get there instead of just going directly. And but I guess he wasn't very smart with money, and he did it too fast or something, and he by taking over the whole religion and making it just monotheism, and so he pissed off all the priests, and so they deposed him, and so he had to run away. So what he did is he ran with all of his people, but he stole the Ark of the Covenant, and he stole all the gold, and that's why they ran after him. They didn't run after Moses because they wanted the slaves, the Hebrew slaves. They ran after Moses and his people because they wanted the gold. He stole money and the Ark of the Covenant. And this Jewish filmmaker said that what saved Moses, it wasn't God parting the Red Sea, but it was like they crossed, because that was actually the same exact time as the island of Santorini exploded. Now, I didn't actually double check that on my timeline, but I'll go do that now. My program is like frozen still. That's why I made this video. And so like he crossed, and that was when the water was down, and then the water came up from that explosion right when the Egyptians ran after him. And also, just as an aside, that Egyptian filmmaker said that, you know, those seven wraths from God that Moses made were actually because of Santorini. It stirred up the blood, stirred up the clay from the bottom of some lake, and then it flowed through the Nile, and that's why Nile was red, and they thought it was blood. And then the locusts were because of all those animals, all those like crickets were fleeing because they were displaced because of that whole Santorini eruption. And then Santorini eruption also knocked away some gas chambers in the bottom of the lake and brought up a bunch of toxic fumes, you know, which were only hovering on the first 3 feet. And I guess all of the oldest children, like the higher up you were in society, you slept on the floor, and then the poor people slept up high for some reason, and so that they suffocated because the level of toxins were below 3 feet. And so it was just coincidence because of Santorini, and it wasn't because of Moses having connection with God. Anyways, but back to Dan Winter. Yeah, he said that Moses was Eknat Han. It was the same person. It actually makes sense to me. Okay, and so what else did I forget? Yeah, and all the different like races. He said that, you know, just like what Anna Hayes, and also with the Syrian sage or Wendy Monroe and all the other people, is that Jesus was here to teach, you know, monotheism again, just like what Eknat Han was, to try to, you know, he stormed into the money chambers and said, don't make money with this, with all of your religious stuff, you know. Religion is not supposed to have anything to do with money. It's all trying to let people be their own people and doing stuff for free and, giving and charity and all this. You don't add money, and that's different, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That sounds kind of the same thing, but Thich Nhat Hanh was a genetically engineered person, but also Jesus was too. And that's kind of in the Bible, like they say Mother Mary was impregnated by God. So maybe she was impregnated by the aliens. And then he had babies with Magdalene, and then they went on and created the royal lines of the royal families of Europe. Actually, Bashar said that. Yeah. I'm all right. I can do it. Thanks. Yeah, and Bashar said that Jesus' blood with Mary Magdalene created the Merovingians, and those were, I think that was what Charlemagne was, the Frankish Empire. But yeah, so yeah, as far as like racially, I guess like he was saying that, yeah, so I guess like the royal family of Jews, of Europe, and England, and like George Bush's family, and the Hanoverian and the Habsburgs and those guys, the royal families of Europe, ever since Jesus, have like more dragon in them, have more reptilian blood in them, and then the other races, like black people, have more crow, Homo erectus in them. And so Homo erectus, because they're from monkey people rather than dragon people, they have more empathy, more compassion. And then the dragon people, the royal families of England, or maybe even the white people, maybe that's what white people are, have less compassion but more intellect. That's what he said. I know that sounds racist, but maybe he didn't actually say black people. He just said royal family of Europe. As opposed to, so I don't know if that's black or not, but something weird happened. So I guess, yeah, there's two different lines. There's more Homo erectus, and then there's more serpent. But that is what black people do say. But black people are, once they start getting into the whole alien thing and aliens controlling the earth and interbreeding with us, say that aliens or white people are from aliens, but evil aliens, and that's why white people are evil. And maybe there's something to that. I mean, I actually hear that on a regular basis on where the different races come from black people. So maybe there is something to that. They've never say that white people are more intellectual, and I'm not saying that either. But they do say that white people are like evil and stuff. They have no hearts, but I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna leave it at that. That's about all I can remember.